Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Counterpoints. I'm Melinda Nusafora. After almost 2 years of war, the Israel-Hamas conflict appears to have reached a dangerous inflection point. Israel is threatening a broader military offensive, one that could include the full occupation of the Gaza Strip. On this special episode, we're bringing you an exclusive one-on-one interview with senior Hamas official Basem Naim, who is joining us from Doha. Mr. Naim, thank you very much for your time here on Counterpoints.
Please, thank you very much.
Before we get into the politics, let's talk about the people. The Palestinian Health Ministry has reported almost 200 malnutrition-related deaths, and UN figures show about 1,500 Palestinians have been killed seeking food aid since late May. Can you give us your assessment of the current situation in the Gaza Strip?
Thank you very much again. I think there are no words to describe the horrific situation on the ground, especially when it comes to the humanitarian situation, to the people on the ground. We are in direct contact with our families, brothers and sisters and relatives, and we are aware about how disastrous the situation it is and how horrific it is and how much they are scaring of what is coming. But here I have to correct something. We cannot simply talk about 200 Palestinians, mainly children, died because of malnutrition. They have died because of starvation. They were starved to death. Otherwise, I was the Minister of Health for years, and I am a doctor, a physician professionally, and I am sure all these men and women and children who died because of this are salvageable, and they can survive if there were enough food and medicine available in the Gaza Strip. Today, we have passed a lot of things we have talked about in the first months of this aggression against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. No one today is talking about electricity, or no one is talking about water, no one is talking about education, no one is talking about health. Today, in the last 3 months, after the fully tight blockade after March 2nd, we are only talking about some food, about flour and maybe sugar or something like that. I think this is reflecting how serious, how difficult, how dangerous the situation on the ground. This famine, this genocide is committed by Israel in front of the eyes and heard by the ears of the whole people around the globe, by all countries. And no one is taking a serious action to pressure Israel to stop this genocide.
I want to ask you if we can call on your medical expertise for a moment. How will people recover then from this current situation in a medical sense? Has the damage already been done? Can it be reversed? What are the long-term impacts? We talk day by day, the figures, but this is going to have a long scale and a long-term impact on their lives, is it not?
100% true, based on medical knowledge and science. A lot of people now still alive in Gaza, if they pass through this horrific situation and survive, they will endure, they will continue suffering of a lot of chronic illnesses, chronic problems like memory, like apprehension, like wasting of muscles, I am sure, deficiency of immune system, and so on and so on. I am sure because some of the elements like magnesium and others, which is built on a long-term process, when you start to lose it because of a long-term starvation, it is not easy to repair the damage. Especially a lot of these elements are needed for the brain, for the muscles, for the function of the heart, And I'm sure if these people, thousands and thousands of people, if they pass through this horrific situation and survive, they will continue to suffer of a lot of chronic problems.
Israel, for its part, says it is doing its best to facilitate the delivery of aid through the newly formed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. There have been reports, though, that dozens of Palestinians are killed daily at these humanitarian foundation aid distribution sites. Can you give us an account of what is actually taking place at these sites? How does the distribution work, and why are we seeing so much collateral damage?
Thank you very much. Again, I have to correct something. You are not talking about collateral damage. You are talking about a designed famine. You are talking about engineering of death traps. You are talking about a designed and planned preparations and creation of inhuman, unbearable conditions in the Gaza Strip as part or as a step on the long-term plan how to expel Gazans forcefully or between brackets voluntarily out of the Gaza Strip. This is not a collateral damage. You cannot talk about collateral damage when hundreds of thousands of people seeking some food, and on a daily basis, we have witnessed now for the last 3 months, between 50 and 100 people killed on a daily basis. Look.
Are you alleging that Israel is corralling people into these distribution sites with the aim of killing them?
I will try to explain something for yourself and for the audience. First of all, we have only 4 distribution points, which is under the total control of the IOF, the Israeli army, the Israeli forces, run by the so-called GHF, which is an American, maybe I think private company. These 4 points have to substitute as Mr. Lazzarini, the General Commissioner of UNRWA, yesterday has tried to explain. There are in Gaza only for the UNRWA more than 400 distribution points for food and aid and other needs, and this is only for UNRWA. Added to this, what's for the ICRC or Medical Without Borders and other sites, and this was before the war. I mean, at the time, not all Gazans were in need for help or for aid. Look, these 4 points, which is near the southern border of the Gaza Strip in Rafah, you have to move around 8 to 12 kilometers walking to reach in a something like a tunnel surrounded by metallic borders, around 8 to 10 kilometers to reach these points. People waiting from dawn time for hours to hear the soldiers or the directors or the managers of these points to say, yes, you can now go ahead. Hundreds of thousands at this moment go into the area and try to get some food. It is expected that there will be chaos, there will be some kind of confrontation or quarrels between the people, but at the moment, the people come near the officers or the GHF officers, managers, or the IDF tanks. They start immediately to shoot. Therefore, how can you imagine that someone who is starving for days and days, or who wants to get some food for his children, and you bring him or confine him into a small area, hundreds of thousands of people, what do you expect? There is no choice for the people other than to seek some food, even they are threatened to be killed. Therefore, this is one example. I hope you can read a lot of reports, including one which was written by the USAID, which is an American governmental body, which was clearly talking about how disastrous the management of these areas, how it is catastrophic to bring thousands and thousands of people in these areas. And by the way, they have denied any relationship of Hamas to what's happening there in these distribution points.
Israel has accused Hamas members of stealing aid that the civilian population desperately needs. What's your response to those allegations?
Maybe the time is not enough, but I can send you at least 5, 6, 7 reports, including the U.S. aid report and UNRWA reports and other human rights bodies reports, which has clearly indicated 2 things. All the people who were killed by Israeli soldiers, and Hamas has nothing to do and has no relation to what's happening there. Part of these groups are gangs like the group of Yasser Abu Shabab, which is armed by the Israelis near these distribution points. And by the way, this is not only during this time. Even before the last ceasefire agreement, they were armed. They were controlling the streets on the way the trucks taking from the crossing in Rafah into the Gaza city or in the middle zone. And every now and then I heard from one of our managers that they were bringing 50 trucks into Gaza. 46 of them were looted by these gangs, who have or carrying Kalashnikovs under the control and the sight of the Israeli army. I think again it is beyond denial that all what's happening there is engineered by the Israelis, again, to create unbearable conditions, inhuman conditions, and also to create the worst in any one of us who is starved for days and days, who see his children are dying because of starvation, to fight for some food. I think this is the goal of this plan.
Turning to reports now that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing for the full occupation of Gaza, do you really think Israel will occupy the Strip? And how would you respond to such a move?
First of all, I have to say we are taking all these threats very, very seriously. Yes, but, and here a big but and underlined many times, I have to say Gaza Strip since 1967 is occupied. It was never independent or free. Israel is controlling the ground, the sea, and the air. Second, Israel was, along the last 22 months, they have entered the Gaza Strip. They have attacked each inch inside the Gaza Strip. They have raised a lot of goals during their presence everywhere in the Gaza Strip, from the south to the west, to the north, and from the west to the east. Raised their goals from the beginning to retrieve the captured Israeli soldiers, to dismantle or to crush the resistance, and to forceful evacuation as much as they can of Palestinians, and maybe if they can succeed, to annex Gaza Strip or part of it for new settlements. I think they were everywhere in the Gaza Strip. I imagine they might do it. They can enter Gaza Strip again and again. They have done it many times. But what is expected? More killing of people, more destroying of the rest of the houses are still standing, more starvation, more famine. And here I have to say something. At the time, all people around the globe, individuals, institutions, UN, even governments, even allies of Israel are calling for a ceasefire and end of this war and end of this famine and genocide. Israel, unfortunately backed up by the Americans, is the only party which is talking and acting in the direction of escalation.
If the Israeli war cabinet or security cabinet comes out in support of Netanyahu's plan. What would be your message to them? What would be Hamas's response? And could we expect inflamed violence from Hamas's allies in the region?
First of all, this is a confrontation between the Palestinians who are defending their own land, their own independence, self-sovereignty, and the occupation, which is the Israeli occupation. If anyone from the region or outside the region is want to support the Palestinian, it is welcome, but this is his decision. We are not deciding on behalf of others. But what I can say to the cabinet or to anyone who is supporting, like the Americans, such escalations and new aggressions against our people. First of all, you will fail again and again and again. You have tried all along 22 months to achieve these goals, to retrieve the soldiers via force and to crush the resistance and to forceful evacuation of Palestinians, and you have failed and you will fail. And this is exactly what 550 senior officers of the security apparatus in Israel have said. We are at dawn of a strategic defeat. You will fail. Second, we have said it many times, we are still in the field of negotiations. We have replied to the offer mediated or brought to us or presented to us by the mediators based on an Israeli offer. We are waiting at this time for the response of the Israelis to the offer handed over through the mediators to the Israelis. I think
so there is still a proposal on the table.
You are not seeking any ceasefire agreement.
So there is still a proposal on the table. Is that what we can take from your answer there?
Yes, sure. We have replied to the proposal which was presented to us from the mediator, and they have told us that this is based on the Israeli vision or demands, and we have replied to it. We have received a very positive response from the mediators, and I can say here, they have talked to the Israeli delegation in Doha, and they have said this is very positive, very constructive. We can go ahead, we can build on this. Unfortunately, after a few hours, when they returned back to Tel Aviv for consultation, we have started to hear from Witkoff and then Trump and then Netanyahu office that this is not acceptable, and we are planning to escalate again. I think we have a proposal on the table. We are looking for a reply to this table, and then to go for negotiation if it is available again.
Can you give us some specifics? What does that proposal entail, and what do you believe are the sticking points?
Look, this is a framework. Based on this framework, we have to negotiate some detailed points, but this framework is talking mainly about 4 points. First of all, 60 days ceasefire agreement. During these 60 days, Hamas is going to release 10 living captured Israeli soldiers and 18 or half of the bodies inside Gaza. The American president is guaranteeing the ceasefire for 60 days. This is the first one. The second one, the aid into Gaza, we have asked clearly to go back to the negotiated agreement of January and the humanitarian annex or agreement that enough aid, at least 500 to 600 trucks, to go into Gaza to freely secure, to initiate the process of rehabilitation of hospitals, schools, and so on and so on. And this has to be under the supervision and the control of the UN and any other international bodies which was working already inside the Gaza Strip. We cannot accept a criminal body or like the GHF or this way of distributing aid to continue because of how it is dangerous and how it is humiliating for our people. The third point is the exchange deal of the prisoners, how many Palestinian prisoners are going to be released in return for the released Israeli soldiers. And this is one of the points which has to be discussed in details. And lastly, the last point was the withdrawal maps. I think based on what we heard from the mediators, the last proposal from Hamas was not far away from the proposal they have received from the Israelis, maybe some small points here and there to be discussed in details if we return back to negotiations. These are the main 4 points have been written in the proposal. And lastly, there is a paragraph or a sentence which is talking about a guarantee from the mediators plus the Americans that this ceasefire time, 60 days, will be used for negotiating the permanent ceasefire, the full withdrawal of the Israeli forces. And if these 60 days are not enough to reach the agreement, it has to be extended for another 60 days or 50 days or more to reach a final permanent ceasefire.
So the US Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that the most recent round of ceasefire talks in Qatar were cut short because he says that Hamas showed a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire. That seems quite opposed to what you've been telling us there. So is it that the US Special Envoy is lying? Have they viewed things differently to you, or did Israel just simply change their mind?
First of all, what I say, I am talking based on confidential details and informations I am aware of. Therefore, I am not talking something only for the media. Second, we have received a clear, positive response from the mediators when they have handed over this proposal or this reply to the Israeli delegation. And they have said it is very constructive, it is positive, we can proceed forward, we can build on this a new ceasefire deal. Again, unfortunately, Witkoff, this is not the first time, by the way. Witkoff, this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time where he undermined a serious chance to reach a ceasefire agreement. If you can remember, and your audience, when we have handed over the American-Israeli soldier, Alexander Aidan, where he said publicly, this will open the door for a new ceasefire agreement. This will enable, or we are going to pressure Israel to allow more aid to come into Gaza and so on and so on. He also repeated the same thing in another,
So can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by Witkoff undermining on multiple occasions the negotiations?
Unfortunately, we have hope that this new American administration, based on what they have announced at the beginning, that they are planning to de-escalate all these war zones in Gaza, in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Ukraine, and everywhere. But unfortunately, in our case, we have seen it repeatedly that they are backing up the position of this fascist Israeli government in all forms. Even sometimes if the cost or the price is to undermine a serious chance to reach a ceasefire. Look, for example, now we have heard firstly from Witkoff and then from Trump that that the negotiations collapsed, that we withdraw from the negotiations, and we are aware how to deal with Hamas, and we have our own plan. And later we have started to hear from the Israelis the same language in the same context. Unfortunately, we have seen a strategic context in the American foreign policy when it comes to Israel and the conflict here on the ground, where they are again backing up these ideological, psychopathic ministers. For example, you have seen yesterday the Speaker of the House of Senate he didn't visit the Knesset. He visited the biggest settlement in Israel, Ariel, and he stated to the press, this is the promised land to the chosen people, and we are waiting for the Messiah to come to rebuild Israel. We have here Mike Huckabee, the minister, the ambassador of America, the United States ambassador in Jerusalem, who said, this is Judea and Samaria, this is not anymore West Bank, this is not occupied, this is part of Israel.
Okay.
Israel is small land, and they have all the right to widen it. I mean, this ideological language, these statements, I think this is beyond any horizon of creating a chance for a political solution. This is converting the conflict into a religious conflict where no space for coexistence or peace or settlement or prosperity. If they believe that this is their holy land, and we believe the same thing, you cannot negotiate. You cannot achieve any kind of compromise.
So
therefore, I think the only party which can stop this genocide and still backing it up is the American administration.
So do you think in that case, Steve Witkoff and the American negotiators have compromised their role as mediators?
I believe at no point they were honest, just mediators. They were always backing up the Israeli position regardless of how dangerous it is. I think in different occasions, we were near to reach a ceasefire deal, but it has been spoiled by one of those two parties, either the Israelis or the Americans. We are still eager to reach an end of this war, to achieve a negotiated ceasefire, if it is a temporary ceasefire for 60 days, to pave the way for a permanent ceasefire and the full withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Gaza Strip, and to end this catastrophic, horrific, inhuman conditions, to allow aid to come in. And here I have to emphasize, unfortunately, when the Americans supporting the Israelis by negotiating the issue of humanitarian conditions and negotiating the issue of GHF or insisting on having GHF on the ground. By the way, this is not part of any negotiation, because the occupying power, in this case Israel, is responsible for the people under their occupation and for their life and for their health and for their education. This should not be part of any negotiation. This is international humanitarian law, unless we are living in the law of jungle. This is the only understanding.
The Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, has said that from now on, the US and Israel are now no longer interested in negotiating piecemeal, partial hostage deals. So a 60-day ceasefire, he says, is no longer what they are working towards. So from your side of the negotiating table, has Hamas squandered its window of opportunity to negotiate an end to this war?
By the way, this proposal was our proposal 3 months ago, and they have rejected this proposal. 3 months ago, we have officially presented a proposal to the mediators, to the Americans, and even to other countries to negotiate one final deal. All prisoners, all captured Israelis on our side to be handed over, and in return, we get our prisoners, and we end the war. We reach a permanent ceasefire, and we have open borders, open crossing, to allow Gazans to launch their life again, to rebuild their life again, and to launch the process of rebuilding Gaza Strip. This was our offer, but they have rejected this, and Netanyahu insisted on a partial deal.
if we move on to looking at a pathway, perhaps, to a two-state solution, as we have been hearing calls for from the international community, what's your assessment of the Saudi Arabia-France-led push to establish that pathway for a two-state solution that we saw being held at the UN headquarters in New York recently?
We have publicly stated our position. First of all, we are welcoming any efforts from any party which support the Palestinian struggle to achieve their national goals of an independent state, self-sovereignty, right of return, based on international law. Second, it was never, not only this time, but always, it was never the problem on the Palestinian side. We have signed Oslo Agreement, we have accepted a lot of other proposals to reach this goal. It was always the Israeli side. Netanyahu, 1996, in the first meeting with President Chairman Arafat, he said it clearly. I am against two-state solution, and I am going to undermine it. And this is exactly what he have done all the time he was in government. And recently, we have seen it many times that the Israelis, they have rejected their conference. They have passed the first reading of annexation of the West Bank, and they have publicly talked about even annexation of the Gaza Strip. I think it was always on the other side. From our side, Hamas, we have said, yes, we, as long as all Palestinians together, all factions can accept as a common ground an independent, self-sovereign state on 67 borders, we can accept this, we will be part of this, and we will facilitate and help to achieve this goal.
Mm-hmm. Actually, well, that takes me to my next question, because all 22 members of the Arab League has jointly called on Hamas to disarm, release the hostages and leave Gaza for the sake of the civilian population and to allow a pathway to a two-state solution. What do you say to them?
No. I think I have to correct something. Some Arabic countries, they have signed the final statement of this conference, but not all Arabic countries, the 22, have signed or accepted the final statement or the final press
They did
release.
Speak with a collective voice to say that they backed it, whether or not they've officially signed it yet.
No. There are some countries who stand against part or some of the paragraphs in this. Second, I think if we go into details, we have studied this press statement in details. The press conference or the press statement is including a lot of contradictions. In some areas, they are talking about international law, and in other areas, they are talking about accepting the Israeli narrative. And because during the whole 2 days of this conference, there was an elephant in the room, which was Israel and America, and everyone was trying to satisfy them by articulating some sentences to satisfy Israel to accept the results, and Israel has at the end rejected the results. For example,
so are you saying that there are some countries who don't want Hamas to disarm?
Let me continue. If you talk about disarming Hamas or rejection of the resistance, I think it is clear in international law that any people under occupation have all the right to resist the occupation by all means, including armed resistance, until they get rid of the occupation. France itself, they didn't get rid of the Nazi occupation. They didn't fight against the Vichy government, which was an ally of the Nazi, simply by such conferences or by press releases. They had General de Gaulle, he fought and he lost a lot of hundreds of thousands of French people in order to get rid of the Nazis and to form a new, or to found a new France. And this happened everywhere, in Vietnam and Algeria. International law is giving us all the right to defend ourselves, to resist the occupation until we get rid of the occupation. And we have said it clearly. If we have our own state, an independent, self-sovereign state, we are ready to hand over all these weapons to the new state, and we are ready to integrate our fighters into the new Palestinian National Army. But before that, no one can ask the resistance, it is Hamas or not Hamas, to skip resisting or to lay down arms. But here I have to say, where all these cities, where all these countries to ask Israel not to disarm itself, where they have nuclear weapons and biological weapons and chemical weapons, and they have dropped hundreds of thousands of tons on the Gazans. Have they courage enough to ask Israel only to disarm the settlers in the Gaza, in the West Bank, who are killing on a daily basis our people, who are confiscating our land, who are cutting our trees, who are destroying our wells? No one is asking them to disarm these terrorists in the Palestinian territories. I think here it was only the goal how to satisfy Israel, how to undermine the legitimate right of Palestinians to resist the occupation, how to undermine the legitimate Palestinian struggle to achieve their big national goals of independence and freedom like any other people around the world.
So to clarify, Hamas would disarm today if Israel and the international community agreed to recognize a Palestinian state?
Yes and no, because recognition.
Well, what's the condition then? Because what's your condition?
Yes, I will continue. Now, already before this conference, 143 countries are already recognizing Israel. But what does this mean on the ground? Zero. Israel is continuing its plan to annex the rest of the Palestinian territories, to undermine the Palestinian existence, to forceful evacuation and ethnically cleansing Palestinians from the West Bank, where there is no Hamas and no October 7, and from the Gaza Strip. The condition is to create a state. When Israel was recognized as a full member state in the United Nations in 1949, it was bound to two conditions: the creation of a Palestinian state and to guarantee the right of return. If this is fulfilled, and we see an independent self-sovereign state in Palestine, yes, we are ready to hand over all these weapons to the state and to integrate our fighters into the Palestinian National Army.
So, but yes or no, if Israel recognized a state in exchange for Hamas disarming, would Hamas disarm?
Why should I answer hypothetical questions? Israel is denying the right of Palestinians to exist. This is the main question. You are asking the victim.
But I guess because there needs to be compromise, there needs to be a negotiation. And that's...
Yes. No. First of all, they have to create the state. As they have created the state of Israel, and they have supported it for 76 years to oppress the Palestinians, they have all the moral and political and legal duty to create the state or to help the Palestinians to have their own state. I think it was clear from most of the Arabic countries that this will be left to the new state to recognize any state around the world, not only Israel or any country. This is the choice of the people of Palestine, how to deal with the 200 countries around the world, which to recognize or which not to recognize. Why you are not asking me to recognize Monaco, or why not to recognize
because there's no conflict in Monaco at the moment, with all due respect.
By the way, it is not a conflict. It is an occupation. This description, a conflict, as if there are two equal parties and we have to negotiate something. No, there is an occupation and we have to get rid of this occupation according to international law, and it is clear. There are no two parties. There's no conflict.
If we go along that line, then that this isn't two equal states. It's not a conflict because it's not equal on both sides. You have a stronger Israel that is occupying and suppressing, in your words, the Palestinian state. If Israel is holding all the cards, what cards does Hamas have left to play in the negotiation? If Israel is the stronger party, does Hamas then not need to come with more willingness to negotiate to the mediating table?
If you talk about today negotiations for a ceasefire, I think we have a lot to have on the table, and I think without these cards in our hands on the table, Israel would not, and the Americans would not support them to come to the table to negotiate with Hamas. I think the Israeli delegation, which stayed in Doha for 2 weeks, it was not because Hamas have nothing to offer. This is first. But if you talk about generally about this occupation, about this oppression, this is the story of all people around the world during history. In Vietnam, in Algeria, in South Africa, in France, everywhere, the oppressor is always bloody, aggressive, psychopathic, and people usually are weaker, but they have the resilience, they have their steadfastness, the commitment. Look, during the confrontation between Israel and Iran in 12 days, more than 750,000 Israelis left Israel to Cyprus. This is only to Cyprus, not to other countries. But during 22 months, during this aggression against Gaza, they were not able to push Palestinians to leave Gaza Strip, despite of destruction, despite of killing, despite of payment. I think this is the strength of resilience, of steadfastness, of rightness. I think at the end, our capability to continue is much, much stronger, bigger, and longer than theirs.
We're almost out of time. I just have two final questions for you. We spoke a little bit earlier about the long-term impact of what is happening in Gaza is going to have on the people, not just the younger generation, for all the civilians there. If you bear that in mind, some of the things that you yourself mentioned earlier in our interview, does your organisation feel partially responsible then for what has taken place and what will continue to take place for the Palestinian people in Gaza?
Look, I as a father of children or a brother of people who are still living there, I have always to feel responsible. I have always to carry this responsibility on my shoulder and to seek and to find any ways to get rid of this horrific situation, to end this massacre, to end this famine. But if you ask on the strategic level, no, because the obligation of people under occupation is to defend themselves. We were besieged for more than 17 years. We were denied travel, we were denied food, we were denied medicine, not only for the last 22 months, but also for the whole 17 years. Where is the responsibility of Palestinians in the West Bank who are killed on a daily basis? You can remember that 1,000 checkpoints besieging each village and each city in the West Bank. I think the responsibility at all times, at all levels, is the occupation and the international community, in particular the United States, who are supporting this genocide and this famine.
How has what is happening now rectified any of those past wrongs?
I didn't get your question in the
how
right
is
way.
what is happening now, though, rectifying any of those past wrongs? How is it making it any better, any more justified? The war that is ongoing now, it can't make up for those past atrocities.
from the first week of this aggression, we have offered to the mediators, to the Americans, to a lot of countries here in the region, to China, to Russia, a three phases approach. The first phase one is to end this aggression and to reach a ceasefire, the withdrawal of the Israeli forces and the rebuilding of Gaza Strip. The second one is to rebuild or to reform the Palestinian government, to have a Palestinian unity government that runs Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and at all levels, in all directions. And I think this is feasible, and it was negotiated through the Egyptians with the PA, and it is on the table. The third option is to go for a political solution to end this occupation, to get rid of this occupation based on international law. I think when we ask for this is not something which is not rational. It is very rational and very fair and very just.
Mm-hmm. You speak of strategies there, so let me wrap up with this. Knowing what you know now, seeing what you see now unfolding, if Hamas could turn back the clock, would the organisation carry out the October 7 attacks again, or accept it as a mistake or a miscalculation?
Unfortunately, this is a question I have faced it many times. You are mixing two things together. First of all, the right of people to defend themselves, to get rid of the prison, to knock the door of the prison, to defend their existence in their own land, in their houses, and the crimes committed by a criminal which has nothing to do with this. I think famine has nothing to do with October 7th. This is a war crime, a crime against humanity according to international law.
Well, let me maybe rephrase it by saying, do you think
the government has the duty to respond to all the needs of people? This has nothing to do with October 7th. The same thing.
Well, if I could reframe it this way for you, Mr. Naim, do you think the Palestinian cause is stronger or weaker? Are the Palestinian people better off or worse off after October 7?
I believe it is stronger, and without October 7th, that the people all over the world have finally understood and have seen by their own eyes the reality we have passed through along 75 years, this famine and genocide since the Nakba. Second, they have reached the conclusion that without reaching a political solution for this between brackets conflict, they would not gather in New York to find a solution. They were, before October 7th, they were planning to overcome or to bypass the Palestinian question and to go for the so-called Abraham Accords, the normalization, the integration of Israel in the region on behalf of the Americans. And I think this is much far away behind our backs today because of the sacrifices of Palestinians after October 7th.
We will leave it there. We're out of time, but we absolutely appreciate having you on Counterpoints. Basem Naim, senior Hamas official, thank you very much for your honest and your frank contribution to our discussion. Thank you.
Please.
And to you at home, thank you for joining us for this special one-on-one interview here on Counterpoints. You can, of course, catch us on Al Arabiya English on YouTube to see all our debates and special interviews. And as always, follow us on X and TikTok so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for your company.